And welcome back again, everyone, to the theater stage. Now we'll have a talk from Julia from the Cloud team, who will introduce us to all things web components and maybe even enlighten us a bit about the Shadow DOM. Please welcome her on stage.
Hello. Oh, nice. So many people. Hello, Codegarden, and thank you for coming. I'm waiting for my slides, so I can't start, but here they are. So my name is Julia. I'm a front-end developer in Cloud team in Umbraco. And today it's my pleasure to be your guide into the world of web components. We're going to learn a little bit about, yes, there will be cringy slides. We're going to learn a little bit about the APIs that make it happen, that make it possible to create reusable encapsulated components in the browser. So I joined Umbraco in January 2021, and that was a year before, before that happened, before the Edge switched to Chromium. And since then, we have web components in every browser, so that's a great moment to start a career in web development. It took 10 years for web components to get mature. And during the time, we saw many front-end frameworks emerging, including AngularJS that emerged and died. And rest in peace. And during that time, web components were slowly baking in this web spec oven. And when they get ready, they found their way into the tech stacks of a lot of companies. We have YouTube that has web components. We have Chrome DevTools that's also migrating to web components. We have Photoshop in the browser. I don't have a subscription, so we only get this lousy screen, but hey, there they are. Some weird selectors and weird tags. And of course, Wordle sold for more than $1 million, so web components can even make you some money. Nice. So a lot of these big companies, they have their UI libraries built with web components, and of course, we have one too. The UI library in Umbraco is now version 1. There's a release candidate, so it's production ready. I'm super happy about that because I've been working on this project for a year. So this is great. And coming soon to your hardcore back office, there's this, a custom grid editor, where you can actually write some web components in Umbraco. You're going to see them in the frame below. This is really cool. We have web components in Cloud Portal that we are migrating and getting rid of our old body AngularJS. And of course, there's a new back office RFC. You can scan the QR code. There's some interactive element. But if you read it, then you will know that web components are a very important part of new back office. And if you didn't read it, now go read it. Comment out. So why did we decide to go with web components in so many places? So first of all, because our CTO loves them, but that's not the only reason. The great thing about web components is they are interoperable. So they can work with a framework, they can work without a framework, they can make bridges between different technologies. That's also the reason why they are so nice to build UI libraries, especially for big companies that have a lot of legacy code, because it's gonna work no matter what. So in the Cloud Portal, they allowed us to migrate it gradually, view by view, and to build, and by not committing to any specific framework, it is possible to create an application where you can actually swap some parts on the way. And that, thanks to web components, will still be built on solid foundation because they are kind of future-proof in the sense that these APIs that took 10 years to get to the browser, they are there to stay. It won't go anywhere. So this is also a way to mitigate your future technical debt because you have something that will always be present and that's part of web standards, not a tool that someone invented. So why web components are cool? That's exactly the reason, because they are that's a difficult word. Interoperability, because of their interoperability, and because they are solid standard-based foundation. So let's take a look at the APIs that make them possible, that make it possible. So first thing is custom elements API that allows us to create our own custom HTML elements. And for that we need the tag name and the class. Tag name should have 2 words. It's also nice to add some unique prefix to it, so you can identify your components easily. So native elements, they have some common properties, like all the divs and spans and buttons, they have IDs and so on. And it would be nice for our custom elements to also share these functionalities, to be able to talk to the browser and to JavaScript like that. So this is why in our class we need to extend the HTML element class, and then at the end we need to tell our browser, hey, if you see this, then take this class, and that's how you're going to create this element. So when the browser parses your markup and steps on this weird tag that it never saw before, then it's going to know that it's supposed to use the cool button class and create an instance of it. And while that happens, we have some lifecycle hooks, so we can run some additional logic when the element is created by the browser, and that should be done in the constructor. We have a callback for when the element is connected to the document, and we have a callback for the element when it's disconnected from the document. So yes, you might be tempted to take some existing native element like button or input or pretty much whatever and extend this. Don't do it, because this is not supported in Safari and it won't be supported in Safari, so you have to create everything from scratch. And when I'm sorry, I wish it was different. So when it comes to native elements, they actually do quite a lot of stuff. So we have this input type of range. We move the mouse, the value gets updated. And if we take the range attribute off, then the element looks totally different. So how is this possible? This is actually possible. Where is this logic hiding? So if we take a peek into the DevTools and we inspect that element, you have to tick a setting to see it. You will see that this input has something called shadow root attached to it, and there are some elements in this shadow root. And they are inaccessible for us. We can't really grab them with any selector. They are hidden, and without this setting enable, you will never see this thing in DevTools anyway. So this is possible thanks to Shadow DOM. It's another API that makes web components possible. And to our custom elements, we can also add this shadow root and then elements to it. Then our custom element becomes a shadow host, and the elements attached to our shadow root form the shadow DOM. The rest is called light DOM. And these elements will also you won't be able to access them in any way from the light DOM level. That's why we can, for example, use IDs without the fear of any naming conflict. We can, all the styles that we define in our shadow root, they are also scoped to our component. So there is no way, so you don't have to worry, you don't have to write something like complex CSS classes, so they are unique. It is all scoped. So this is a very nice feature. There are, of course, some exceptions from the nothing in, nothing out from the shadow DOM rule. We can, for example, style our host element, so this one here, from within the shadow DOM with the host selector, and that styles we can overwrite from the light DOM level. But is there any way to actually go in and style this div ID of ID container from the light level? There is one thing that leaks into the shadow DOM, and these are, so instead of hard coding some value in our shadow DOM, we can use CSS custom properties and the var function. So if the browser doesn't know what is this custom property, custom element color, it's going to use the fallback value. But if we define it somewhere on the root, on the body, or if we use the root selector, then the browser will take this ping value and this will leak into the shadow DOM. You can create a whole styling API in your components, like, for example, in this button from the UI library. It has plenty of these custom properties. And you can change the color, and you change the color of a native button that is encapsulated in the UUI button. The UUI button and many other components from UI library have one more cool feature. They can have light DOM children. We can also have light DOM children, like this one. This is not sitting in the shadow root, but that might cause some. How is this possible? Because, well, the browser, where should it render? Where should this div be rendered? Before the shadow elements, after them? We don't really know. So the answer is they won't be rendered until you add a slot element to your shadow DOM, and then this div, during the render, it will be projected to this slot, but it won't be, it's not like it's going to be sucked into the shadow DOM. It will stay in the light DOM, but it's going to be rendered in this particular place. We can have named slots. We can have as many of them as we want. It's a really nice, powerful mechanism of composition and composing custom elements together. Because slot element knows what it has inside. It has some special methods. You can grab these elements. You can grab some data from them. It also has a slot change event, so you can track the changes in it. So these are the two APIs that make possible to create these reusable HTML custom elements with some logic and styles encapsulated in there. But these two APIs, they do not solve one big problem, which is how to update the DOM. Many of these front-end frameworks we saw before, that was the main motivation for creating them to make the DOM reflect the state of components and the application itself. So of course that can be done manually, but it's not a pleasure. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of performance issues and optimization. So it would be nice to have some tool that will update the DOM for us. And in Umbraco, we decided to use Lit. It's a small library which is a really nice helper for writing web components. We use it in the UI library. We battle tested it in Cloud Portal 2, and it's also recommended in the RFC. And it's going to do 3 things for us. It's going to update the DOM and make the whole component reactive. It's going to attach the shadow root and handle all the web component boilerplate code. And it's going to give us a nice declarative templating engine. So let's take a look on how vanilla web component look like. We have a counter here. We smash the button and we increment the count. So if you were supposed to write it from scratch without any help, you would create a template element where you put your styles and some elements, and then you have my counter class that extends the HTML element, your constructor, and in there you attach the shadow DOM, and then in connected callback you append your template to the shadow root, and you put some event listeners on the buttons, and then you finally run the update method that swaps the inner HTML of this span here for the value of count. And then at the end here, at the line 54, you define the element. So that's quite a lot of code here that we would have to write. So let's see how we do it with lit. It looks a bit clearer than the previous one. So this is TypeScript, and lit with TypeScript is used also in UI library and in the Cloud Portal. And one thing, of course, this is all possible with vanilla JavaScript, but TypeScript provides a nice feature for us, and these are decorators. So on line 4, we have a custom element decorator that we add to the class declaration here, and that solves this long custom elements.define line for us. Then, instead of extending the native HTML class, we need to extend the lit element class, and that brings reactivity to our component and a lot more things. Then on line 6 we have another decorator, property decorator, that we add to the count field, and this makes this property reactive. So whenever this value changes, and that happens when we smash the button with increment and decrement methods, the component will be re-rendered. And that brings us here to the render method, where we have something called tag template literal. It's this HTML backtick, and then there are elements and another backtick. And because this is also based on vanilla JavaScript, and we can pass expressions to it like we can to the template literal with dollar and curly braces. So on line 33, in this span, you can see we have a reference to the count, to the discount property. Oh, discount sounds like discount. So in that way, with this decorator, we tell it, hey, whenever count changes, go and re-render the DOM. It's not going to re-render the whole thing. It's just going to swap the value. It does it with some smart, it puts some tiny comments in the markup, and then it knows what to do. So yes, you can see also we have on the buttons this @click lines with references to the methods. This is also a really nice way to add event listeners, and it looks a little bit like you would do it in Vue. So it has this familiar way of doing it that is very expressive, and it's clear what it does from the very beginning. So one more look side by side. Well, I don't know, we could have a vote, but well, I vote for this one because, hey, who would want to write all this stuff? Well, I don't. I am a lazy person. So, if you are curious and you want to play around with custom elements, you can do it with UI Library. But on Friday, there are workshops. There are still a couple places left at the workshop, so you can scan this code and join. There's an online version too. There are not that many of these places, so hurry up. There will be quite a lot about custom elements there. So I hope it was a good intro. When I prepared this talk, I figured out that I have content for an hour. But I had 25 minutes, so that's the only part I could fit. Thank you, and thank you for so many. There are so many of you. Thank you. And yes, like and subscribe, of course.
Yes. And again, thank you so much to Julia. That was quite interesting, and hopefully we're all ready for the new back office now. But again, we'll have a couple of minutes break just to figure out some microphone stuff, and then we'll have a Q&A session with both of our speakers, so you have an opportunity to ask all of your burning questions. I do believe you have to ask them on the app, though, and then we will have, I do believe it's Jason Elkins, yes, who will host this and ask all your questions for you. So thank you so much.